Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today's focus is really on what it takes to become an intelligent finance organization, to drive a new level of business agility amidst all the constant change around us. We will highlight what we see as the new standard for enterprise or corporate performance management. I'm Nick Cox, Head of Product Marketing in EMEA at OneStream, and I am joined today by a number of fellow presenters. So I'll hand over to Barry. Would you like to just say a quick round of, kick off a quick round of introductions?
Hi, yes. Hi, everybody. My name's Barry Downey. I lead the solutions consulting team for OneStream Software in EMEA. I'm 20 years in EPM, last 5 with OneStream. Prior to that, I worked for another vendor, and prior to that, I was on the other side of things as a finance systems manager at a large financial services customer. So nice to be here today. Over to you, David.
Hi, yeah, I'm David Allen, so I'm Head of Corporate Systems at TP ICAP. So one of my responsibilities is looking after the EPM system here at TP ICAP. Yeah, my background, I've been at TP ICAP in a couple of guises since about 2013. And previous to that, I was a background in consultancy.
Hi everyone, my name is Kit Harrington. I'm the UK advisory lead for Inlumi. My background is I'm a chartered accountant and been in consulting for over 15 years in EPM and finance transformation. So in the advisory practice in Inlumi, we're helping clients define their EPM strategies and roadmap, and then supporting with the process organisation and business change.
My name's Ash. I'm the head of consulting for Inlumi. So my background's a mix of industry and consulting. So a number of years in group finance, and then last 15 years in consulting, the last 3 of which have been building consulting business inside Inlumi. We're a pan-European specialist implementer of EPM technology, specifically OneStream. So before we go into the agenda, I was just going to provide a very short synopsis of kind of what we're here to talk about, really what is intelligent finance. And the essence or the nub of the story really is the following, and that's that technology has been part of finance for the last 20 years and has been playing an increasingly important role over that time. What was true in the past was that you bought a tool for a job or an application for a process or a purpose. So they were point solutions, and then you integrated them all together, and that's what you operated. And when one became old or out of date, or things had changed around it, you went out to market and you bought a better version of what you had before. The change now is that this generation of technologies is fundamentally different. These are platform technologies that are equally good at multiple processes. So you might start your decision or your journey to make a change looking at one particular process, but when you go out to market, what you'll find, what we're going to talk to today in terms of OneStream, is that there's a far bigger business case. There's far more value that can be added to the organization because they're platform technologies. Not only are they platform technologies, they're also capable of holding, storing, and enabling you to work with far more granular data, far more higher volumes of information. Once you get to kind of operational, transactional level details, the value you can add to the organization is again far greater than what we could ever do in the past. And that enables what we're going to be talking to in the next sort of 10 minutes or so, which is intelligent finance. So in terms of agenda, that's what we're going to kick off with, is just Nick and I will do a talk through of our point of view, which is intelligent finance, and how OneStream plays a role in enabling that. Then we're going to do a panel discussion where I'll ask the individuals you've just met a number of questions to help sort of characterize what we've been talking about. And then actually, if you submit any questions in the Q&A function that you see below, then Nick will monitor those while we're doing the panel discussion, and then we should have some time to be able to answer some of those questions that you've raised as well. And if we don't get time in the session itself, we'll follow up by email. So either way, we'll get to those answers. So that's what we're going to cover, and Nick is going to start us off.
Great, thank you, Ash. Yeah, so I just wanted to introduce what we see as a new inflection point for finance. And we've seen transformation taking place over time, really, with the previous generation to manage the complexity in financial close and consolidation processes, and of course performance reporting, which really we could say to create that solid book of record. And this is work that's very process focused. It's of course regulatory, and what we've noticed though is it can still be quite difficult to really grow and change with an organization. We've also seen a focus with finance leaders on enabling people and process through business partnership, and really by taking steps to handle complexity in planning and forecasting processes. And this is work that's been taking place for quite some time now. But again, it's extremely difficult to scale with legacy tools and to grow as organizations grow. And so while many organizations continue to make investments to simplify and scale these processes, we are now seeing a new, what we call inflection point building for the Office of Finance. And that's to take the vision of the virtual close and bring it closer to reality, and to understand what is happening now and take action to drive performance before month end. So we see financial signaling, which is a kind of early warning signal, you could call it, as the next critical innovation to help finance teams break through this inflection point and then really break free from our monthly reporting cycles. And this is right time finance, and important because this next era for finance teams will be defined, in our view, by our ability to lead at speed, to drive the organization with agility and pace, but to do so without compromising on control and governance. But our view is we cannot get there if we continue to try and solve for the complexities in our financial systems and processes the same way we've been trying for the past 20 years. Which leads me to a little bit of self-reflection here. Where are we after 20 years of finance transformations? Well, I hope you would all agree that there's been a lot of progress in many areas. Technology investments have been positive, and most organizations have made advancements. However, with change a constant theme, according to PwC in their Leading Finance in the Digital Era study, many organizations are still spending 2/3 of their time data gathering. And FSN in their Future of Analytics in Finance, the 2020 survey, found a staggering 86% of analytics efforts are missing the mark. And this is effectively investments in analytics which have not delivered what was fully expected. And then the final one, according to Gartner, only 13% of organizations can identify performance issues before they hit the financials at the end of the month. So this, I probably don't need to say, this represents huge risk. And so before we can move forward to address strategically how the Office of Finance can change, we think it's critical for finance teams to try and understand the root cause of these challenges. So over to you, Ash.
One of the, and I'm sure everyone kind of recognises this from organisations that they've worked with or worked in, and there hasn't been any way around this in the past, and the cause of some of the statistics Nick has just provided is fragmented finance technology landscape. So that's this point I made at the beginning, which is point solutions that have a specific purpose. They're good at what they do, but you need different things for different jobs, different tools for different jobs, and then they all have to be integrated together. And then when the organisation changes, that's really complicated. You need different skill sets to look after them because generally they're different technologies coming from different vendors, and it's complicated for the users to know what they should get from where and to make sure that one thing adds up and is reconcilable to the other. So that's what creates a lot of the complexity. That's what causes a lot of the time spent data gathering. That's what impedes finance being able to influence positively the P&L in some way and help the organisation outside of the close cycle. That's why it's difficult to get real value out of data analytics projects and works, because you're dealing with all of this complexity at the same time. If we then roll that forward to what technology is able to provide now, I think there are 4 characteristics that stand out that make it kind of simple to understand the sort of value of a next generation platform such as OneStream. So the first one, the easy one, this a few years ago is what we thought it was all about. It was all about moving to cloud, buying it software as a service, and then having the vendor manage the infrastructure instead of it being in your own data center, having the vendor manage the upgrades, doing that more frequently to stay out of date. All of that is true, but actually some of the main benefits here and the biggest point that really drives a lot of the value is that they are single platforms capable of, their market leading platforms, their market leading capabilities on top of the platform at multiple different processes, whether that's budgeting, planning, forecasting, consolidation reporting, balance sheet reconciliations, tax provisioning. It's a very wide range and list of capabilities, and these platforms, or OneStream, is market leader at all of those different processes. So that's what drives real value. That's what drives a lot of the reduction in the complexity and removes that fragmentation you saw on the previous slide. The next point that's important and is extra value that's provided is, sorry, Nick, on the previous slide. The next point is the pre-built functionality and applications that have come. So this is, we're into finance technology, we're several generations in, and they improve each time. This generation is no different. The good thing this time is you get a lot of pre-built applications and functionality for your investment. That reduces your cost of ownership going forward, that reduces the complexity and the amount of problems you have to manage. The final one is then the ability to hold and store operational or transactional level detail. That enables you to add value outside of finance across the organization to take on problems like sales and operations planning. These are things that we just couldn't do in the past. The term for the trend that's emerging here is XP&A. Gartner have a study at the moment, I think, that says they believe, or 70% of CFOs that they surveyed believe, that all projects in the next 3 years, or all FP&A projects will become XP&A projects. So that's when you're storing operational detail. And again, all of this drives far more value to the business case than we saw in the past. So it's about being able to plan and analyze at the level the business makes decisions at the frequency that's relevant to matters, whether that's daily, weekly, or monthly. So then if we look at then the ambition, so there's a lot of objectives you would want to be able to solve with a classic full finance transformation enabled by platform technology. But just to call out a few things, I think it's important to focus on stuff that finance is good at. 3 of those, the first of which is data governance. So it might not be the most stimulating subject in town, but we're going to come on to this in the next slide. Data is critical in so many ways, and then governance is something that finance does well and can add additional benefit to the organization, that whole supply chain of data. Next one is there's no one more equipped in the business than finance to explain performance to the organization in an understandable way. That's key. That storytelling is a key and specific skill to finance. And the next one is modeling, good old classic modeling, where finance understands and creates the connections between different parts of the organization, different parts of the P&L, to understand the levers that you can pull to improve performance. So if we were to say what 3 things might characterize the ambition, one is to be able to drive performance across the organization, create a culture and inspire a culture of improvement and innovation, and then have access to a technology platform that you can grow and take on and take benefit from the emerging trends of the future, like AI or machine learning. You can't just, or analytics even, you can't just go do these things in a fragmented landscape. You need to get the basis of your core processes right on a single platform and integrated. And that encapsulated is what we call intelligent finance. So the next point I just wanted to highlight really, which is the supply chain of information, a key to unlock that finance are uniquely positioned to add value to, is to be able to see across the organization from a data perspective. And by owning that supply chain of data, to be able to turn it into insight is a key skill and opportunity for finance. They have the right skills to apply to this, to be able to provide the information where and when it's needed the most, and then act as that sort of strategic coach, that classic high value FP&A role, which is coach and advisor to the business.
Great, thank you, Ash. So what you've really just seen is at its core what OneStream was designed to do, and the answer is because OneStream offers something unique, which is one single solution that covers the full range for the Office of Finance, and that allows organizations to unleash the value of finance through technology rather than forcing finance teams into fragmented processes and tools. So OneStream provides best-in-class, award-winning planning, analytics, financial close, financial signaling, and all with built-in best-in-class financial data quality. And because these processes are all in one application, it simplifies the user experience and the technology environment significantly, because principally there's one product to learn, own, use, and maintain. And while we've designed the platform to address the most sophisticated problems that large organizations face today, we've done so in a way that makes the end user experience as simple and easy as possible. And extensible dimensionality is unique in OneStream. And I've seen so many organizations in the past having to run 2 or more consolidation processes for management and statutory reporting due to different dimensionality, or often more for the business units, or multiple planning processes for the same reason. OneStream unifies all this. And lastly, the platform is specifically designed to allow customers to extend and to deliver additional capabilities such as predictive analytics, people planning, account reconciliations, and more, so easily and without the disruption that has plagued previous generation EPM deployments. So OneStream is the only EPM vendor that has been able to deliver on the Apple App Store concept with the marketplace, and our customers really like it. Here are just a few of the brands that have already come to OneStream and begun to take steps to drive their transformation forward. About 70% of our customers are coming from multiple legacy EPM, CPM deployments, and they are making the choice because they're thinking about transformation from a platform perspective. And with a mission of 100% customer success and referenceability, we are building our success one customer at a time to pursue success for our customers relentlessly. And we know that doesn't happen without our entire organization fully dedicated to customer success and sharing experiences like we're doing today. So with that, I will hand back to Ash to begin the panel discussion.
Very good. Right, so we're about to do, as Nick said, the Q&A part. We're going to start with the panel bit, and then again, I encourage you to add or submit some questions, and then we will try to get to those as well. So in terms of the Q&As, Kate has the first question. So one of the statistics that Nick had mentioned actually in the slides they provided was that 66% of time for finance is still spent gathering data, which basically means many processes are still manual. Why do you think this is, and how do you see the challenge being addressed?
Yeah, so I was reflecting back like Nick did, and I've been in consulting for just over 15 years. And I think if you'd said back then that 15 years later we'd be where we are now, it would be pretty disappointing actually. I mean, finance is still spending a lot of time not only gathering data, but reconciling data between the complex legacy systems, point solutions, in different data formats, timings, different data structures. And another issue is that the granularity of data often isn't what is needed for the business. So then finance need to go through a set of manual steps to prepare it for the business. But I do see the next generation technologies, and including the single platform, being a step change here. So I would hope that in 5 years' time we're in a sort of a very different place to where we are today. And I think another thing I'd add is the recognising in the short to medium term anyway that the attachment to Excel within finance. Often I've seen in implementations trying to force out Excel, and then it just leads to offline spreadsheets. So to embrace it, a strong Excel tool within the technology for now.
I think that's quite an interesting point actually, Kate, and I would sort of underline that from my own experience as well, which is on the one hand, I've seen lots of projects started with the stated aim of removing Excel, but the reality is it's too intrinsic a tool, and modelling is a key skill of finance. It is about embracing it and making sure that it's drawing on data from the right data from the right place, and it has the right role to play. So I think that's a really good important point to highlight. So David, as you're working for an organisation now that's embarked on one of these transformations, can you tell us a bit about the scope of the project and then how you arrived at the decision for change?
Yeah, thanks. So we're currently implementing OneStream. We started that implementation in 2019, and we are going live hopefully August, September 2021. So later on this year, we're in the midst of UAT. When we look at the scope of what we're undertaking, currently, I think someone in the past went to Hyperion or went to Oracle with a shopping list and basically asked them for every single EPM tool that they had, and we bought it. So essentially what we're doing is actually looking to move our whole Hyperion estate, migrate away from there onto OneStream. The Hyperion platform is used globally throughout the organization by regional finance and by group finance. So why did we do it? There's a couple of things. Obviously the key thing was around support. So support for 11.124, which is the version we're on, was obviously coming to an end. At the point that we started to look at this, which was in sort of early mid 2019, there wasn't an upgrade path. So for the current on-prem, so which forced our hand to look at the market and actually look what else was out there. So with that, it actually also gave us the point to actually, take a step back and actually look at what other things in the organisation weren't quite right with the current processes and the current platform. So so some of the issues we had and some of the things we would want to resolve with a new application, things like the infrastructure. So like I said, for our Hyperion application, so we've got HFM, we've got Essbase, ISO cubes, we've got Hyperion planning, we use HPCM for our allocations and DRM as well. So when you take that, it becomes quite a complex infrastructure to maintain. So one of the keys and one of the things we would look for would be to, right, okay, how do we simplify that? Off the back of that complexity, there was also other things around the movement of data. So, for example, whenever a planning cycle was finished, we'd had to physically take that data, move it out of planning into HFM. So from my team's perspective, a lot of the time during these sort of processes, that all they were doing is copying data and moving data around. So we wanted to try and eliminate some of that, and also try and take some of the non-value add work away from that team. Some of the other things that were going on in the business that we were getting requests for were things like strategic planning. So at the moment, everything's done on Excel. So we didn't have a solution for long-term planning. Another thing was around sort of governance and control. So over time, there was a looseness with some of the controls in the system and some of the governance. So for example, we'd have group having the ability to post journals into regional books in HFM without the regions knowing about it. So no communication there, and all of a sudden the only APAC will come in the next day to see their numbers have changed. They wouldn't know why. So we wanted to look to address that. Some of the controls as well. So for example, planning, one of the planning processes, actually happened twice, whereby the planning process was finished, data was copied into HFM, and then it was the next day that it was realised that the tax accounts hadn't been run, which meant having to redo a whole load of work and delayed the submission of the budget for another day. So one of the other key things was around auditing. So we'd had observations from our external auditors around having the visibility of what the admin team was doing in the system, but also equally being able, from the admin team's perspective, being able to see what the users were doing. So it wasn't always very evident to trace through when things changed, who had actually done those changes. So, and on a similar theme around data. So our HPCM application, we've got within there over 1,500 rules, which means that to build that out meant that we ended up with 4 different servers. So from a user's perspective and from a reporting perspective, it was very difficult to understand where data was coming from and to get a single view of that allocations data. So they were really the key drivers, along with the upgrade coming along.
Yeah, so I think what you tell actually, David, and you tell it really well, is a fairly common story, which is you have an estate that's sophisticated in its own right. So what you're using, well, still are at the moment as your mid-project, but what you're using is they're market-leading technologies in their own right. It was just to get them to work to meet your needs. It was complicated because you had to integrate them all together, and it made it difficult to kind of add in new value like the long-term planning or make changes, and it created its own complexity. So I think you've sort of summarised some of the benefits really well, and hit some of those important points. So it's kind of the removal of complexity, the ability to be able to service additional processes like long-term planning, use Excel in the right way, and provide the businesses a level of transparency between group and the regions. I think that's quite a big theme, actually, isn't it? It's not one you might necessarily have pointed directly to right at the beginning, but it's certainly a really big driver of the benefits that you'll see with a single platform, is that whole transparency point where everything's happening in the same place, therefore everyone has sight and visibility of what's going on. So as we're coming around to a question for yourself, Barry, so David, the other thing I noticed is you're in the office, so that's really encouraging to see. As I still sit here at home, I do enjoy my 1 or 2 days a week in the office. It feels like normality will return. So Barry, one of the questions I'm going to ask you actually is around data and analytics. Again, this talks back to one of the statistics that Nick had provided, that the view of the CFO surveyed was that 86% of analytics projects still missed the mark. So that talks to a significant trend, which is we need to be working with far more data at a far higher level of granularity than we ever did before. So kind of operationally relevant levels of detail. So why do you think, what do you think the benefits are, and why do you think investments in this area, because they're clearly well-placed investments, but why do you think they're still proving challenging to get value out of?
I think so. Kind of going to be good to take some things that have been said before, but it comes back down to data. We go back to your introduction. Actually, you talked about that spaghetti challenge that people have, lots of different fragmented systems and everything. If we look at the last 20 years, what we want is data and more of it, and the solution was either to put all of the data in one unstructured place like a data warehouse, or to put it in point solutions. But I think what's now being asked more and more is, okay, but what's that data for? So that's why I think those 14% of people are doing right. They're actually saying, well, okay, I've got this data, but actually, what is it doing? So in David's example of the tax there, okay, I finished my financial consolidation, but then who's the owner of the information beyond that? What's the finite outcome of that process? Because there's downstream implications to all of that, such as the tax element. My tax provisioning numbers. Tax is one of the largest costs to most companies on their income statement. So these things are now being considered, and I think those 14% that are realizing value is that they're actually understanding what the data, that operational data, is for and how it contributes to downstream processes.
Yeah, interesting. So actually, David, sticking to the data theme then, so I know that you guys are loading fairly high volumes of information into OneStream, and that it's important that you've got a really strong alignment to your ledger, so to your Oracle ledger. Can you just give us some examples of the purposes that you're using the information for?
Yeah, so So one of the Hyperion applications that we use is Essbase, and we utilize that for ad hoc reporting for basically on Oracle balances by segment effectively. So so SmartView is used across the organization. So there's a lot of use of Essbase and that ad hoc nature of SmartView. So we need to get that data at the same level from EBS into OneStream, so that we can continue with that functionality for the business. Secondly, what we're also trying to do, and which was different from app to app, was the way that the structure of data. So, for example, in planning, we only had a summarized balance sheet, so which meant it was very difficult to do. Well, firstly, to do any analysis back to actuals, but it's also difficult for users to always understand what they were looking at, because they wouldn't know where the data was come from, because it had been rolled up under the bonnet effectively. So effectively by looking at those structures, aligning them to EBS, that meant that it would be easier for people to know where they were in the system, and it would allow some additional and a greater level of insight into the numbers.
Yeah, okay, that's all very clear. So Kate, if we just sort of change the theme a little bit onto people and process. So I know that that's been one aspect of your role on the project that's ongoing at TP ICAP. So what do you see the biggest people benefits that project's trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I've been working with David really since the beginning of the project, and I've recently been focusing on the business change side. So one of the objectives that we set up front was to have a global set of processes, a really global solution, and eliminate regional disparities. And touching upon what David was talking about around sort of disconnects between different parts of the organisation, so maybe between group and local teams. And I think through a number of measures, so especially workflows and more extensive reporting, we've really managed to create a better mutual understanding between the different teams and really improve the transparency across the organisation. So that's, I think, been one of the biggest sort of people change benefits. I think the other thing to note is that we're really only at the start of the journey of TP ICAP. So we have the platform in which, going back to 13% of CFOs believe they can impact the P&L ahead of the close. TP ICAP definitely wants to be one of those, and to be able to access and share data earlier and more frequency, and deliver improved insights to be able to support with strategic decision making and long-term planning, etc.
I think you made some really important points there, Kate, and I genuinely love the mutual understanding and the transparency point. They could seem on one hand to be sort of fairly soft things, but I think they're really, really powerful ways of describing how important it is to connect people, even across finance and across the organisation. And you can't do it without transparency or an understanding that you're both all looking at the same things. So Barry, one for yourself now. So your career has always been focused around this area, be it on the industry side or software vendor side as it is now. And that's meant, so what have you seen as being the key foundations of an intelligent finance solution?
Absolutely, Ashley. So let's start. It's come up time and time again. It's more data and more stakeholders of that data as you work towards a more operational view of the world. The granularity of data is only going to get deeper and broader, and also our requirement to report is only going to get deeper and broader. So this data, the age that we live in, is only going to evolve. Also, the stakeholders of that data are broader and wider. And what I think a modern intelligent finance solution needs to do is to be able to encompass all of that data, bring that into a platform. But now, going back to the point that Kate was making about that relationship, those stakeholders need to understand the dependencies on that data between those different processes. It's about having a robust solution that can manage multiple different processes and understand those stakeholders, what their requirements are, and how, as the data flows from one end of the process to another, how the dependencies and how the process needs to react to that. What that needs to lend itself then is a system that is flexible and agile enough to encompass all of those structural requirements, those workflow requirements, to add a layer of governance and consistency of approach, but also the flexibility to change, because as we all know, finance doesn't stand still. We've talked about it, the pressures are only getting greater, the level of data granularity is only going to get wider. So we need to have a system that can change accordingly, because we don't want to be in that system where we move back to those fragmented days where just because we can't accommodate in the current system, we go out and purchase another one, or we go out and build something else in the system. We want it to be all in one place, and that system needs to accommodate that, not only for the now, but also for the future requirements.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So David, just thinking a bit more about the project and where you are in it. So you're coming up to the UAT phase of the work you're doing. Do you have any advice or any lessons learned so far? Any points to share?
Yeah, so it's a couple. I mean, one of them, and this is probably on us more than anything, was around the assumption that OneStream was going to be very similar to HFM, just because of it's created by the same guys. There are themes all the way through that users and admins will recognise, but there is still an element of change, and it would be the same with any projects of this sort of size, that there is going to be still quite a steep learning curve for users, but there will be the underlying themes there. So that was a little bit of not an eye-opener. I think it was us just wanted it to be a bit more like HFM. So I don't know why, but then the other side was more around sort of the people and bringing people along on the journey. So one of the things we ended up doing to try and get that buy-in was to create effectively two groups. One a champion group, which was effectively 2 or 3 people in each region and from group, who were our key contacts for those areas, and then an extended working group in each region. So they were our key stakeholders all the way through, and we brought those along all the way from the inception and through the design, all the way through to UAT. And that worked really well, because it basically brought them along on the journey, got the buy-in to some of the solutions that we were trying to bring in. But it also helped with facilitating some of the activities. So, for example, the UAT and the UAT training, we utilised those guys to tell us who the best people were to actually be to undertake those activities. Whether there was a holiday in Singapore when we were doing the APAC UAT or whatever it might have been. So that's really worked well for us, and it's definitely helped sort of embed the solution globally.
Yeah, I mean, they sound like small things on the face of it, but I completely agree, David. Having that representation in the right areas of your business, being a bit sensitive to kind of what's important locally, I think it helps build the buy-in to the solution. And then it talks back to one of the main premises of OneStream, which is you can actually service and provide value to different bits of the organisation more than just group, which is classically what we did in the past. So having them being brought into the project will make it much more likely that you continue to get value from the platform going forward, as they come up with new ideas, new purposes, new value they can get out of it. So Kate, David mentioned one or two, but anything else you would add from a people and skills perspective?
One thing is that EPM technology business cases have often focused on efficiency and compliance, but it's also really important to take a talent and people lens. So think about how you can best attract and retain talent, and then importantly, how you can really unlock the value of people and make sure that you're freeing their time to value to the business. It's about having a people strategy up front that's made possible by technology and really enabled by technology. And think about, as you're going along the project, for example, how could you better leverage data to improve the value that the team are providing to the business? How could you use collaboration and visualization tools to enrich relationships that finance have with the business, for example? And maybe think about using user adoption tools to look at not just where the users may need training, but also how they can better exploit the tools as well. And I think another thing just to note is it's quite easy to get lost in the technology sometimes, especially sort of midway through a project, but always having that roadmap in mind and having the people strategy in mind in parallel, and looking, as I mentioned, around how that people strategy can be enabled by your EPM investment.
I think it's a really interesting perspective, Kate, and yeah, just one I would echo wholeheartedly, and I'm glad you've highlighted it, really, because it's technology is often, I mean, as this webinar in a way, technology is often the star of the show, but it's important not to lose sight of the fact that actually you're doing this to be able to enable probably a people related benefit, and actually if we get the right people engaged and interested, then that's where real value will come into the organisation. So I think that's a really important point. So Barry, you get the final question actually. So what advice would you give to anyone about to embark on this type of transformation?
Okay, so I always think that when I talk to my customers, I urge them to think about designing their processes by thinking of the reporting backwards, thinking of the requirement backwards. In the past, I've seen where solutions have perhaps been realized or designed without this thought in mind. They've thought about just getting the data in and then the rest will take care of itself. But the fundamental measure of the success of any financial system is your ability to report from it. That is how CFO will measure it. That is how the audience and how the end users will. Do they get what they wanted from out of it? And that's fundamentally reporting. Also recognize that requirements over time change. What we see now, and I said this before in answer to a previous question, the system that we're designing for at a point in time is going to have to change. And that may change within the project cycle itself, but also 5, 10, 15 years down the line. So I know that we're not in the ability to predict the future, but have one eye on the fact that you're not designing in isolation, you are trying to design a future-proof system, and therefore look for a technology that you know that you can grow with as a business and as a process, and that's going to accommodate the data and your reporting needs, not just now, but potentially in the future. You're going to have to manage this system over a number of years, and it needs to hit the mark and give you that return on investment, give you that a lower total cost of ownership over that time frame, and not just right now. So think backwards.
That's a good tip and very succinct at the end. I like that one actually, that talks about that your change case will be built on a certain amount of value initially, but you're right, you're making this because of the breadth of the capabilities of the platform of OneStream. The value you're going to get won't just be characterized by the project's moment in time, it'll be characterized by how you build on it in the future. And yeah, I think that's a really good tip to give. To have to consider kind of both the here and now, and a little bit about sort of directionally what might come in the future.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, thank you very much to you all. I know some really interesting points and answers given. So Nick, we're on to the next part of the session, which is a short recap on some of the points we've had so far actually. So after this, we'll be getting into some of the questions that you've asked in the Q&A, in the chat function, or in the Q&A function. But just to kind of recap some of the themes we've covered in intelligent performance management and in talking about the technology and in OneStream and the value it can bring. So the first one is you consider it, and hopefully we've kind of made this point fairly fairly regularly through the session, but consider technology as a platform rather than a suite of applications. So that's where you will find benefit. That's where you will try and start to undo some of the sort of fragmented nature and landscape, some of the stuff that stops you moving forward, makes it expensive and complicated to change, makes it kind of slow and sort of manual to use. It's that platform point versus a suite of applications trying to address kind of points needs. The next one is then, it's about having a step back, and I believe this one quite strongly, upfront as to what the real transformational value can be found. And that can come across the enterprise. It doesn't just have to be constrained by what's needed inside finance alone. That's okay, and that's high value in and of itself. But because we're not constrained anymore by the volume of the data that we can hold, therefore finance can add value out of the organisation, out from finance out. And that's an important point to consider. The next one, again, none of this happens without us do the right supply chain of data. That's kind of the lifeblood of it all, really. And getting that right, getting it managed, getting it governed, that's an important thing to consider, and having the right granularity inside the applications to add the most value. And then the final one, I think all of this is adding up to really unlocking parts of the potential of finance, and one of the key potentials of finance and one of the key areas of value they can add to the organisation is to enable this role of coach and advisor. So it's very specific to FP&A. Generally, they're generally the sort of tip of that spear, but it's them that have the strongest connection generally to the business, and that coach and advisor role, being able to understand and explain performance, the storytelling that goes in. That's a really, really key benefit that platform technologies like OneStream will unlock for the organisation.
Great, thank you, Ash. So I think, yeah, we are we're going to open up to questions. We do have a couple of questions. We probably have time for one more. So if one of you has a question you'd like to ask, please put it in the Q&A, and we'll come to it. But Ash, and to the panel, actually, we've had a question around the approach, and so David mentioned the kind of the amount of processes and systems that this involved. And so there's quite a lot that you could take on as an organization. And so the question is, do you recommend a big bang approach to this or a phased approach?
Why don't I start, and then anyone else can feel free to chip in with their perspectives, and without trying to sort of dance around or give too vague an answer, my response would be that there will definitely be a defined set of priorities that these to be achieved in order to fund a business case. Avoiding big bang is generally a good thing to do. So I would almost mix the answer really and say it's more common now because of the nature of the applications, because of the number of processes, the amount of complexity they can remove because they're single platforms. It's much more common to look at multiple problems or multiple processes at the same time. However, when you look to your deployment, phasing the go live will definitely have benefits. It will definitely manage the change to the organisation. So a big bang should definitely be avoided. That doesn't mean you can't approach the project to do multiple processes at the same time, and some of it sometimes can be funding dependent. So a bit of a mixed answer, but you can definitely do things in parallel. That's probably the main trend we see at the moment because of the nature of the change and the benefit we're trying to affect. But phasing the actual go live, that's definitely important.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? No,
just from a technology perspective, likewise to Ash's answer, that it's kind of, we can do both. There's no reason why you have to approach any particular process first, or why you cannot do a big bang approach. The technology can accommodate both. It's more about what is the requirement, what is the burning issue, your resourcing and your internal capabilities, and what's the driving issue behind the change.
Yeah, there's definitely design benefits actually to looking at the problem holistically. Certainly at the beginning, that doesn't mean you do have to necessarily do everything to the nth level of detail at the same time. You can do a high level design across multiple processes and then sort of deep dive into the priority and phase the rollout that way. But there's definitely benefits to considering the problem in total.
Yeah, and when we look at what we're doing, so we've effectively designed the whole system altogether. So it's, they're integrated processes, but some of that we will be parking for a phase 2. So we're getting the design, and we'll be going live with an application which matches the same functionalities we have now, but some of the not nice to haves, but some of the enhancements that they'll be going in a phase 2 because of the criticality of getting the core building first, and we will be doing a phase go live across the different bits of functionality.
Great. Okay, thank you. So, well, we've just one other question then, I think, which is just around trends that you're seeing around EPM, and what would you say is the sort of current hot topic in conversations around EPM, and what's the key, maybe one of the key drivers to these projects?
So again, I'm happy to start. I think the single biggest one at the moment that in my experience, just it never really came up very often, but now it comes up nearly all of the time, which is this sales and operations planning, or XP&A. That's one of the biggest ones, and that's enabled by the ability to have a more operational, transactional level data put into OneStream as a platform. So that's one of the biggest ones. It's quite a complicated one. That's quite a big nut or area to take on. You definitely want to do that in a controlled way with the right buy-in at the right sort of C-suite level of the organisation. But that's probably one of the biggest trends. I mentioned one of the others, which is in the same way as TP ICAP have approached their project, which is to look at integrated processes across EPM, underpinned by an integrated design from technology point of view, so in this case OneStream. So those two things are probably the biggest ones really, which is looking at multiple EPM processes to drive the business case, and then this emerging trend of XP&A.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you.
Sorry, if I just say one more point to that, and I suspect actually it's not just the capabilities of the technology that's made that last one, the XP&A one, more prominent. It's probably a lot also to do with the volatility of markets. And I'm not just talking about COVID, obviously that's probably the biggest, most prominent one that's in all of our faces at the moment, but it's a truth in general, isn't it? Which is we deal in volatile markets that are very rapidly changing, new threats, competitors, organisations need to be resilient, take advantage of opportunities faster than the competition. All of those things are true. All of those generally need to be data driven, not solely and entirely run off the numbers, but you definitely need to have a core of the numbers influencing or supplementing the decision making. So I think that's probably one of the things driving the trend to look at really granular planning and operational level detail XP&A.
Great, thank you, Ash. Yeah, so we'll move on to just wrap up actually today's session. So just really wanted to encourage you to stay connected, and please do visit both the OneStream and Inlumi websites. Check out our blogs. You can easily subscribe to those, and we do keep them updated quite regularly. Of course, you could follow us, OneStream and Inlumi, on LinkedIn, and we'd love to have you follow us and like and share and comment on posts. And then if you're a current customer, we invite you to join our OneStream Customer Champions program, where actually you can earn points for advocating OneStream. So it leads me on just to say, on behalf of OneStream and Inlumi, we really thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Ash, David, Barry and Kate for presenting and being on the panel. I wish you all a very great afternoon and have a good evening. Thank you.